Hello, this is Soundout here, and welcome back to another episode of Soundout's Toy Chest. This week's clue, long, long ago in the year 2013, which of course refers to Star Wars The Black Series 2013 releases. Yes, that's right, today on Soundout's Toy Chest we will be taking a look at every Star Wars The Black Series 6-inch figure released in the year 2013. That includes the Comic-Con set and the first two waves of figures. So without further ado, let's begin. So the first item released for Star Wars The Black Series in 2013 was the San Diego Comic-Con exclusive Boba Fett and Han Solo and Carbonite set. Now this thing was so hard to get after the convention. It was super popular. It was a reasonable, I think it was $40, if I recall correctly, for the set at the convention, and the price skyrocketed after the convention was over. I got mine through a website called Robot Kingdom from a Hasbro Asia release, I think, or something. I don't know. Whatever it is, I was able to get it. Now, what was the big deal about this set? Boba Fett is in the line later in Wave 2. Well, first of all, Boba Fett hype. Second of all, the Carbonite. Han Solo in the Carbonite is not available outside of this set as of right now. It could come out years later. But as of right now, this is the only way to get the Carbonite is in this set. Now the price has gone down a little bit from the insane prices from post-convention 2013, but it is still probably the hardest thing to get from this line. So without further ado, let's take a look, starting with Boba Fett. Now Boba Fett here is quite nicely detailed overall. I think the sculpting was really well done on this figure. I love the cloth goods for the cape. I think cloth goods have their place in the adult collector market, and companies need to use them more for things like, well, capes like that. Other than that, there has been some molding changes, I believe, with these pouches. I remember something about that online. I have not done the research to confirm or deny what has been changed, but I knew there was something about his design that was slightly modified for articulation. But overall, he looks really great, which includes his helmet sculpt up here, which, as you can see, has a lot of nice detail. Now, the extra paint details, they are slightly modified for the retail release of this figure, and I believe there are less paint apps on the retail figure. But articulation-wise, he does have a ball joint neck with a forward and back hinge, outward shoulders to that extent, 360, elbows, rotation, wrists, they pivot here, while on this wrist they do the same, but the elbow is a little different. As you can see, it's a ball hinge here. This is a ball hinge with an additional piece for the hose. He's got a torso joint. It does really just turn left and right. It can wiggle slightly. Hips move out, not so much forward, not so much back, but they do rotate here. A double jointed knee there, a forward, slight forward, mostly back, and a ankle pivot. So he's got the articulation range of a standard Marvel Legends, which is about the articulation range of this line. But he does come with a few accessories. Here we have his famous jetpack. Now the jetpack is one solid piece. The rocket does not come out, which is admittedly a little disappointing. It would have been kind of cool if the rocket did have a removing functionality. But of course not a rocket launching, because we had that whole incident back with the original Boba Fett figure. Other than that, it's nicely detailed. It's got the same kind of weathering that has applied to Boba Fett himself. It just pegs onto his back, and he's all good to go. Here is his disintegrator pistol, which looks really nice overall. I like how both hands are sculpted to hold guns, so they do the trigger finger forward. But you can also take this one and holster it down here in the hip holster, which is really, really nice. I appreciate that functionality. Here we have his famous blaster rifle. Now this is his most popular sidearm that has been seen. It looks really good. It is really awkward to hold, and it does end up bending the stock when you have it carried under his arm like that. But it is really cool. It doesn't have any storage place, but that's okay because he mostly carries it anyways. So that is it for Boba Fett overall. He is quite the solid action figure. So here's the Han Solo and Carbonite, which, as we know, Han Solo pulled off the most dramatic of poses in the Carbonite, so of course this is the most articulated Star Wars Black Series figure to date. Well, it isn't, because the Carbonite, it is just one solid piece of plastic. It's actually two pieces of plastic. A lot of people say, hey, it's like a hunk of plastic. No, it's actually two. And this back plate here, so you can see, runs through the lines. But overall, it is a nicely detailed piece. You got all the control knobs and dials and stuff over here. Really, really nice paint up here, which is really important for display. And as you can see, they kind of gave it a brighter silver across Han Solo, so it kind of looks like, and it catches a light too. So it looks like the light in Jabba's palace, which is really cool. As you can see, it just kind of grabs light, which is a very nice paint detail. Other than that, it's not really a whole lot, and the extra price of the set, even now, is not really worth it for this little thing. But it does have a stand, as you can see here, which connects to 2 pegs on the bottom and pegs into a hole in the back here, and it can stand like that. Or, using this piece, you can have it in another configuration, and that allows it to hover as it's transported to Boba Fett's Slave 1. So this is a really cool piece. Overall, the Han Solo and Carbonite, of course, is naturally just a display piece. It's not a fully articulated figure. It doesn't need to be. It does exactly what it does. It stands, and it moves like that. It hovers. That's all it needs to do. That's it. It's Carbonite. Moving on to Wave 1. So here we have figure number 1, Luke Skywalker in his X-Wing uniform. Now, it doesn't say that on the box, it just says Luke Skywalker. All our versions of Luke Skywalker have the specific costumes named. It's a little weird that way, but as you can see, it is Luke Skywalker in his X-Wing costume. Let's take a look at the figure up close. So overall, it is a very nice representation of Luke in his X-Wing costume, which a lot of this molding could be used on taller figure bodies to make other X-Wing pilots, and I'm surprised that hasn't happened yet, but I figure, give it time, it will happen. But let's talk about the head sculpt, as the head sculpt has been a little bit controversial. Yeah, there's been several Luke head sculpts. Every Luke figure so far has had a different head sculpt, which is really weird. But this one is very much in Episode 4. It's a very younger looking Mark Hamill. But there is neat little things. You can see the mole on his face like there. The hair color is good. It looks good overall. It's not the best of the Luke head sculpts, but it is probably one of... It is better than, say, some of the 4-inch ones. Let's go with that. Overall, very nicely detailed figure. Articulation-wise, he has the standard forward and back head, ball joint, shoulders, elbows, wrists. This wrist pivots in and out, and this one pivots forward and back for lightsaber poses, which is really handy. Ball joint, upper torso. The hips are restricted by these things, but they do move enough so you can get some movement out of them. But as you can see, it's standard articulation all around. Boot rotates there and there. So they did a good job hiding joints overall. But that is pretty much it for the base figure. Let's take a look at his accessories. He naturally comes with the helmet for his X-Wing uniform, which is well painted and detailed, and is just a separate piece that slides on over his head, as opposed to an alternate head, which is really nice. But you can see it looks very, very good overall. He also can hold the helmet thanks to the added wrist joint, which is really, really cool overall. He does include his blaster, which there's not much else to say, it's a blaster. And he has his lightsaber, which of course looks very good. You also can remove the blade and actually hang the handle from his belt, which is really, really cool. Despite not having an X-Wing, X-Wing Luke Skywalker is actually not a bad figure overall and is really, really cool. And is a good introduction to the first of currently 5 Luke Skywalker figures we have. Number 2 in the line is Darth Maul, who is currently our only Episode 1 figure in the series so far. But this is probably one of the coolest in the line, and was the first one I picked up. So without further ado, let's take a look. So Darth Maul here is actually a 2-for-1 deal, as he does come with a removable cloak. It is packaged in cloak form, as you can see here, and looks very, very good. As you can see, he does have this rubberized cloak. It's not soft goods, it is rubber as opposed to cloth, which I don't mind in this instance, as it does have to be attached to his head. And the trickiest part about Darth Maul is getting his cloak over his horns, which you can actually see are protruding from the top here, and they are molded in. And you can see it looks very good. Now his head turns a little bit, his shoulders move a little bit, his elbows have full range, his wrists have their full range with the Jedi wrists, so you can have pointed up or down here and left or right here. His hips still have full movement, which is the same as Luke's. The Jedi all seem to have a relatively universal joint system. And Yes, I know he's a Sith, but he uses Jedi parts, and we've got more Jedi than Sith. He's also mostly black, so he's throwing the white balance off in the camera. But you can remove the cloak, and now we have Darth Maul in his full glory. Plus you get a cloak Maul, which looks a lot like Cloak from Marvel Comics, so that's pretty neat. Now this Darth Maul is fantastic. We can actually take a look at the head sculpt now that is fully revealed. This is fantastic. This head could not be more perfect, I don't think. It looks so much like his actor. It is very, very good looking. He also has the range of shoulders has been opened up and a torso ball joint in addition to the full head movement. But yeah, that head sculpt really sells this figure overall. Now, in terms of other accessories for Darth Maul, we have his famous dual-bladed lightsaber. Now this lightsaber, of course, has two blades, which makes it really unique and gives it a bow staff kind of feel and balance to it. It's really cool, but it is a little rubbery. The handles are rubber, so they do kind of warp if you try to use two hands on the blade. But it does have a few other things. It can split in half, just like how Obi-Wan cut it in half in The Phantom Menace. Darth Maul can have a split in half lightsaber, but instead of one blade powering down and the other half being useless, you can keep both blades in, and this looks really, really cool. I like the idea of him being able to split his lightsaber at will. I know that didn't happen in the movie, but there you go. You can do that with the toy, which is pretty neat. You can remove both blades and peg it into his waist socket, which is really cool. I like this functionality, being able to store the lightsaber. Now there is an accessory designed for his cloaked form here, which you can see is his binoculars that he used on planet Tatooine. Fortunately, due to the restrictions in his articulation, he can't exactly hold it up to his face. So, kind of an accessory fail there. But what's not an accessory fail is the ability to put just one blade into the lightsaber to replicate the first duel with Qui-Gon Jinn. If we only had a Qui-Gon Jinn to duel him, it would be perfect. Overall, outside of a couple minor flaws, Darth Maul is fantastic and is a great representation of one of my favorite villains from Star Wars. Number 3 is the Sandtrooper with the orange shoulder pad. There will be a black shoulder pad one later. Now this is the first Trooper mold we have gotten in the line, and is the basis for everything else that we will get from the Stormtrooper series of figures. So without further ado, let's take a look at the Sandtrooper. Man, oh man, do I love this Sandtrooper. My problem with every previous Sandtrooper figure was it didn't look sandy. They'd give it an orangish tint or something. It just didn't look right. This looks like a guy that's been out in the sand and dirt and dust of Tatooine for months, and he hasn't cleaned his armor, and probably can't because it is so dirty. They did a great job with the paint wash here all around. Now this varies figure to figure, but this one was one of the best ones I've seen. I love the way that it gets onto the top part of the belt, but not on the inside, which is a very realistic effect. So overall, the Sandtrooper looks great, but how's his articulation? Well, as you can see, the ball-jointed neck, forward and back pivot, nothing new here. The shoulders are a little restrictive because of the design, but 360 shoulders, double-jointed elbows, bicep swivel, an inward bend wrist that's a little stuck on this one, a upper torso joint, an outward hip, forward hip, backward hip, a thigh swivel, a double-jointed knee, and a forward and back ankle pivot, plus a tilt. Really, really articulate trooper. Which is really good, because if you're wanting to troop build these guys at $20 a piece, it's best that they're a really good figure. Of course, he comes with his backpack. All I have to say about it's backpack. He also comes with a standard rifle, and a standard pistol as well. Plus, whatever the heck this thing is, I honestly have no idea. What I do know is it can be stored on his shoulder, like that. That is all. Overall, the Sandtrooper is quite good and sets a great base for the rest of the Stormtroopers to follow. Number 4 in the series is R2-D2. Yes, a $20 action figure of R2-D2. Let's see what he's got. We are already at a controversial figure, because this guy's $20, and so is that guy. I'll tell you this, Darth Maul does a whole lot more. Yeah, R2-D2 is a $20 standalone figure. which really should have been like a $20 2-pack with C-3PO. But instead they packed in some accessories and decided to call it good. It was easily the worst selling figure of Wave 1. It did stick around in stores for a while, but I have seen him vanish now. And yet, we still have not gotten a C-3PO. I bought this when it first came out because I thought there was a C-3PO shortly behind him, but no, there isn't. We don't know when C-3PO is coming out. Anyways, here is R2. He looks really nice. But let's talk about what he can do. Well, you have 360 legs with the rollers here, which do have wheels. And then his head turns 360 to roll out his third leg. Oh, Hasbro. This is one of the things that kind of shot Hasbro in the foot when the line first came out. Yeah, this is an action feature. Spin R2's head. Watch the leg go down. I'm surprised not all these things up here pop open, are spring-loaded. Like these are, because when you open these, they're spring-loaded. So you have to... yeah. $20 action figure, people. Has gimmick that could have just been alternate part. So yeah, anytime R2 wants to move his head, his leg's going to move with it. So unless it's like subtle movement like that, you're going to have the leg move. This is really one of the biggest missteps in the line. But let's talk about its good things. It does have a lot of functionality for what it does. As you can see here, he has a couple little tools that are hidden away in these doors, and to swing the tools out before the door closes. So you got a little claw there, and on this side you have his little interface patch tool. So that's neat. Other than that, all these little ports open up here. So you got this one here, which goes away, and you can bring in Luke's lightsaber from Episode 6, and you can insert that there, as that was the backup plan, was to have an extra lightsaber stored in R2 for the battle. So that's convenient. But the other two things are a little bit more recognizable. As you can see here, we have his little radar scope thing. Yay! And then on the back one we have his other radar scope thing that pops out. Which this one makes less sense because that door needs to be there, just like with this one. The only one that works is because this raises out of the door. It is the top of the door. The others really need fake doors there too to be accurate. And lastly, you can pull these off and make him a prequel trilogy R2 with little thrusters. So that's neat overall. But yeah, R2 isn't the greatest value. The reason you get him is because you want the whole set, or you want an in-scale R2. That's about it. Moving on to Wave 2, we have Figure 5, Princess Leia Slave Outfit. The figure you can find in almost every store right this moment. Because she shelf-warmed that badly. Let's find out why. Well, we go from one disappointing figure to another. This is Princess Leia Slave Outfit. First of all, Hasbro, why is the first 6-inch Princess Leia figure the slave one? Couldn't have you gotten Hoth, or her white dress from Episode 4, or Indoor, or her bounty hunter, or something first, instead of this one? Also, could you have made this a better figure? This is really one of the most lackluster figures in this series, which is why she stuck around shelves for so long. First of all, her head sculpt. She looks bored. So bored. Yeah. Anyways, her head sculpt's not great. This is our first female figure in the line. She's got a ball joint, no forward or back swivel. This moves. That's something. Outward shoulder movement, 360 shoulder. Single joint here. Wrist, pivot. And she has Jedi hands, so they pivot up and down as well. Upper ab articulation thing. Hips, swivel, double joint knee. No ankle joint, which is a problem. Also, copyright information on the inside of her legs is very noticeable. And a cloth, loincloth thing that is peeling apart slowly but surely. It is starting to fray. This figure is less than 2 years old, and it is already fraying. Yeah, this figure isn't too great. Honestly, she doesn't look good. The joints are very noticeable because of her, nakedness. And it just looks bad. She comes with two things. These aren't getting special spotlight. These are just two random weapons from the fight on the skiff at Jabba's palace. That's about it. I really don't want to talk about this figure anymore. It's kind of depressing. Figure number 6 is Boba Fett. We've talked about him already. Let's move on. Figure 7 is Greedo. Wave 2 of the Star Wars line, and Greedo is the 7th figure. Kind of an odd choice, to be honest, but let's see if the figure's any good. Let me say this to start. Greedo is great. The only real problem he has is that because he's a unique mold figure, only comes with one accessory. Spoilers, he just has his little pistol. He's a hard sell to a lot of people, which is why he did shelf warm. But unlike Leia, who shelf warmed because she was an awful figure, this guy is shelf warm just because he isn't a, he's relatively well known, but not a good value proposition. But he looks fantastic. The head sculpt is perfect, spot on to his appearance in A New Hope, and looks quite good, as well as the figure itself. Fully articulated with the head, the shoulders, the elbows, wrists, wrist pivot. He's got an open hand here, a closed trigger hand here. He's got a waist joint, hips, thighs, double joint knees, all that good stuff. This is the most articulated Greedo of all time, and probably the best Greedo of all time. And I gotta say, I really do think he's great. Now, of course, what is awkward is that he really doesn't have a lot of posing options. You can have him in About to Shoot Han and in Dead Pose, or you could be like me and pose Greedo in I'm an awesome space bounty hunter pose, like that. There's really not a whole lot to say about Greedo. He doesn't do a whole lot, which is probably why he shelf warmed. But overall, I gotta say, he comes with a pistol. That's all he really needed. He's got a lot of articulation, and the sculpt is really good. So, as a Star Wars fan, I like this figure. As a toy reviewer, though, I gotta say it's a little bit harder of a sell. But if you want a cool alien figure for your display, absolutely get him. He's also available in 2-pack with Han Solo at Toys R Us. Speaking of Han Solo, figure number 8 is Han Solo and the last figure of 2013. Han Solo here is a fantastic action figure, and I'll show you why. But the reason he is shelf-warmed, and this is why I think he's shelf-warmed, is because he was released in Wave 2 and 3. They reissued him a wave after he came out. So, that's an issue. But, as you can see, this is a great figure. The head sculpt is quite spot on to Harrison Ford, especially from that angle there. It looks quite good, and this is the same head sculpt they use, again, I believe, with the Stormtrooper variant of him. But it looks quite good. His articulation is the standard joints all around. He's got full range everywhere, which is really nice. But let's talk about what he can do. First of all, he's got his belt holster here. The whole belt hip guard thing. You can pop this open here, and you can stick his blaster in there. That's really cool overall. But the other things he can do are far more impressive. First of all, he can hold his blaster, which is quite awesome. But that's not the most exciting part, as he actually comes with a whole different set of costume bits. First up, you get alternate hands where he's wearing the yellow gloves from when riding in the Millennium Falcon. A really cool inclusion that wasn't possible before on smaller Hasbro or Kinder figures because you couldn't have swapping hands on 4-inch figures. Too much of a choking hazard. Here it pulls off really nicely. But I would have liked a head with the headset on it. That would have been kind of neat. But I'm not going to dock the fact we got alternate hands for Han Solo and nobody else so far. That's not all. You can swap out his belt for the Stormtrooper belt he had. This is really cool. It's not a piece of crossplay with the Stormtrooper, it's actually a piece included with him, which is great, because that's another, costume change for Han Solo that's included right in the same figure. And, of course, he can hold the Stormtrooper blaster like that. But there's one more thing Han Solo can do. His vest is removable, so you can have him replicated just before he's about to be put in Carbonite. Or just after being rescued. This is a Han Solo that can pretty much be every version of Han Solo except for Hoth, Indoor, and wearing a Stormtrooper outfit. And we've already got separate figures for those 2 out of 3 of those. So overall, this Han Solo is quite great. So overall, the first year for Star Wars The Black Series, or first half year really, had a lot of great high points. Luke Skywalker, the Sandtrooper, Darth Maul, Boba Fett, Greedo, Han, and then it had a couple low points, Leia and R2. But overall, it's not a bad set of 8 figures, and with 6 of them being really good and 2 of them being kind of meh, it's not a bad start for a line. Unfortunately, though, Wave 2 would be the last wave to ship on time. Yeah. Problems persist with this line in the future. But that is all for this week on Soundout's Toy Chest. Stay tuned for next week, where your clue is activate the AVs. For those that might know what that is, leave a comment below and tell me what you think I'm going to review. Until then, though, be sure to stay tuned here on Soundout 12 for 3 videos a week, with Model Kit Monday on Mondays, Soundout's Toy Chest, the Mystery Review Series on Thursdays, and the Soundout Review on Saturdays. And also be sure to check out Hirotaku.com for all your Star Wars news and more. Until next time, this is Soundout saying goodbye.